Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 151. I'll do it myself. The dark red vines seemed to have been infected by Meng Hao's fury. They whipped about wildly, creating a buzzing noise. Dust rose from the ground like a fog, obscuring Meng Hao's figure. His black scholar's robe now looked a bit faded. Long hair whipped around him, and killing intent, fueled by his intense anger, rose to the heavens. This killing aura was poles apart from Meng Hao's usual disposition. Veins of blood filled his eyes. He saw Xianxia's helplessness, her bitterness, her pale beauty, and then the simple smile that broke out on her face. That smile became Meng Hao's everything. Meng Hao loved her. It was the youthful love that comes from looking at a pretty girl. A simple love. After the dissolution of the Reliance sect, they had been separated by an entire world. Now that they could see each other again, the years that had passed didn't seem very long after all, almost like a dream. 7 or 8 years ago, you were a young girl who stood beneath the moon and accepted the cosmetic cultivation pill. Now, 7 or 8 years later, here you are, your face pale, but smiling. 7 or 8 years ago, I was a scholar standing on Mount Daking who threw a gourd bottle down the mountain. You will never know the promise I placed in that gourd bottle. 7 or 8 years later, here I stand, my killing intent billowing to the heavens. The road behind me doesn't stretch very far, but it is filled with the bones of cultivators. 7 or 8 years. For mortals, many things can change in 7 or 8 years. For cultivators, 7 or 8 years is not a long time, but then again, cultivators all begin life as mortals. Meng Hao was no longer the scholar he had been 7 or 8 years ago, but the memories from that time still remained. He would never forget those years. He gazed at Xianxia and smiled. His smile contained warmth, and the happiness of seeing someone again for the first time in a long while. It lasted until he looked upon the trembling man surnamed Zhao who stood there pale-faced, his robe hanging loose on his body. Xianxia felt as if Meng Hao's eyes were two sharp swords stabbing into his own eyes. The gaze entered his head, causing his mind to tremble. It pierced his blood and flesh, grinding against his bones and stabbing into his qi passageways. It stabbed all the way to his Dao pillar. His Dao pillar was filled with cracks. He obviously had a fractured foundation. The Dao pillar shook violently, as if Meng Hao's gaze would cause it to crumble to pieces. Xianxia was frightened out of his mind. Fellow Daoist, Senior, I'm Xianxia, a conclave disciple of the Black Sieve sect. Fellow Daoist. His tongue quivered as he spoke. He might be a rich kid, but he wasn't stupid. The pink shield from just now was a treasure that could only be broken by the late Foundation establishment stage. And yet Meng Hao, who seemed to be at the early Foundation establishment stage, had crushed it. He also saw Meng Hao's frigid killing aura. It was powerfully intense, something that he had never actually seen before in his entire life. Your surname Zhao? Meng Hao said coolly, beginning to step forward. I just killed another guy surnamed Zhao. His name was Zhao Binwu. Meng Hao had acquired Zhao Binwu's name from the identification medallion in his bag of holding. As he took his first step, it felt to Xianxia as if Meng Hao was stepping directly onto his heart. His heart pounded, filling with a difficult-to-describe pain, deep inside. It was then that Meng Hao's words from just now registered in Xianxia's mind. A thunder-like roaring filled him, and his body shivered. He unconsciously took a step backward. Meng Hao's gaze swept over him, filled with an incredible pressure. Xianxia's mind reeled again, and his trembling body lost the ability to move. Facing Meng Hao, his cultivation base seemed completely incapable of producing even the smallest amount of power. This was crushing pressure. Meng Hao released the full power of his perfect Dao pillar, creating a pressure that could crush down upon any Foundation establishment Dao pillar. This was an innate ability of a perfect foundation. Because the perfect foundation struggles with the heavens over spiritual energy, it has the ability to emit crushing pressure on all other Foundation establishment cultivation bases. Amidst his trembling, Zhao Shanha's expression flickered. Meng Hao took a second step, and as the step descended, Zhao Shanha's face grew deathly pale. Blood oozed out of his mouth, and an intense dread crept into his eyes. "Fellow Daoist, if you want to talk." His entire body shook, but even as he tried to speak, Meng Hao took a third step. He stomped down. Zhao Shanha's spirit shook and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The Dao pillar within him was unable to withstand the pressure exuded by Meng Hao. A large fissure sliced all the way through it. More fissures grew, spreading out to fill the entire Dao pillar. The blood drained completely from Zhao Shanha's face, and his eyes filled with anguish. Trembling, he was just about to use all the power he could muster to fight back, when Meng Hao, face blank, took his fourth step, which was filled with powerful killing intent. The instant the fourth step descended, the roaring within Zhao Shanha rose to the heavens. His heart suddenly stopped beating for a moment. All of his organs seemed to slow as the cracks spread throughout his Dao pillar until suddenly, it disintegrated. The Dao pillar disintegrated. When that happened, Zhao Shanha let out a blood-curdling shriek that was unlike anything that had emerged from his mouth before. He coughed up 7 or 8 mouthfuls of blood, and then began to wither and shrink. Cold sweat poured out of him, and his face was ashen. His body could suddenly move again, but all that he was able to do was retreat backward. Before he could move backward very far, Meng Hao took a 5th step, and now he was standing in front of Zhao Shanha. His knee flew up, not toward Zhao Shanha's neck, but directly between his legs. Pop, pop. The intense pain caused Zhao Shanha to double over, screaming. Even as he screamed, Meng Hao's right hand shot up and clamped onto his neck. The scream now existed only within Zhao Shanha's throat, with no way to emerge out. He could only whimper as his face began to turn a dark purple color. Unable to speak, unable to scream, the pain seemed to grow 10 times worse. His eyes bulged, filled with insanity, and his body twitched. He suddenly wanted to fight back. But he couldn't resist. He was powerless to even struggle, unable to even utter threats. His body shook, filled with pain. He was like a mortal, his Dao pillar destroyed, his cultivation base in ruins. "Stop!" cried a trembling voice. It was Xianxia, who was still next to Xu Qing. Her body shook and her face was pale. But she still held the sword at Xu Qing's neck, seemingly ready to stab it in at any moment. To her, Meng Hao appeared to be some sort of devilish fiend, cruel and ruthless. It caused the blood to drain from her face, and she didn't dare to even look him in the eye. Regret welled up from within her heart, but it was too late. She could only beg for him to let her go. "You're Meng Hao, right? I've heard Xu Qing talk about you and the Reliance sect. This is all just a misunderstanding. I just want to leave." Her voice trembled as she looked toward Meng Hao. Even though she held a sword, she was actually the frightened one. "I used to be a scholar," he said coolly. He continued to hold Zhao Shanha up by the neck, but turned to look at Xianxia. His voice was soft as he continued. "Once I read an ancient text that was said to be from the Great Tang in the Eastern lands. It described thousands of bizarre execution methods. There was one that, after I read about it, caused me to have nightmares for days." Eyes filled with loathing, he reached up with his left hand and grabbed one of Zhao Shanha's fingers. One by one, he crushed the bones of the fingers of both hands. Then his arms. Then his shoulders. Then the rest of his body. Zhao Shanha wanted to pass out from the intense pain, but couldn't, not with Meng Hao there. Time passed for as long as it takes an incense stick to burn. Finally, Meng Hao twisted his right hand. A popping sound rang out as Zhao Shanha's neck was snapped. The entire time, he was unable to utter a single cry. Such was his death. Meng Hao dropped Zhao Shanha's body and then looked at Xianxia. "How do you want to die? I'll let you decide." Her face was completely pale, like a corpse's. Her body trembled, as did the sword she held in her hand. She looked at Meng Hao, and dread welled up within her. This was like the worst nightmare she had ever experienced. Don't you force me," she cried. Even as the words left her mouth, the ground beneath her feet exploded up. A dark red vine snaked out, wrapping around her body and sending the sword spinning into the air. Meng Hao flicked a sleeve to knock it 25 or so meters away. The vines circulated around Xianxia, their mouths wide and seemingly dripping with saliva, just waiting for Meng Hao's command, whereupon they would consume her. "Don't kill her," said Xuqing quietly, struggling to her feet. She looked at Meng Hao. "I want to do it myself. I've been wanting to cut her tongue out for years." Gritting her teeth, she retrieved Xianxia's sword. The vines lowered Xianxia toward her. "Junior sister Xu." "I." She faced Xuqing, trembling, an imploring look on her face. Xuqing, her face cold, lifted the sword and stabbed it slowly into her mouth. Xianxia's screams echoed out. Xuqing leaned forward and whispered into her ear, "You can't fight back, so just close your eyes and enjoy it. I've always wanted to tell you, you are the slut." She twisted the sword in her hand. After the space of about 10 breaths, Xianxia stopped struggling. Xuqing stabbed the sword in even deeper. This chapter was sponsored by Abdelkrim Wahasna. Chapter 152. Words Under the Moon. With an old companion, Xuqing looked at Xianxia as she stabbed the sword all the way through her head. Then she stepped back, pale-faced. Xianxia slipped into death, and Xuqing stood there silently. Meng Hao looked at her and then walked up next to her. Together, they sat down. The vines dragged Xianxia's body down into the ground and began to devour it. The moon hung high in the sky, and everything was quiet. No one had noticed the ripples of battle magic. After all, this blessed land was a very large place. "First time?" asked Meng Hao. Their shadows overlapped in the moonlight. She was quiet for a while before nodding. "The first time I killed someone, my heart was troubled for quite a while," he said softly. As he looked at her, images from the Reliance sect floated into his mind. A breeze passed by, cleaning away the stench of blood. Xuqing's hair curled up, brushing against Meng Hao's face. It was hard to tell whether it wrapped around his face, or his heart. "Was it after the sect disbanded?" asked Xuqing, turning her head to look at him. Her face was pale, but to Meng Hao, it was beautiful. He remembered the night years ago when he had escorted her back to the East Mountain. As he'd watched her walking away from him, he'd thought to himself that he wouldn't mind marrying her. 1. If you want to review Meng Hao's musings about marrying Xuqing, reread Chapter 13, Manly Cao Yang. It was a memory from years ago, such a long time ago. It was hard to determine whether or not it was simply the idling of youth. "Actually, it was inside the sect," said Meng Hao with a smile. He felt relaxed. This blessed land was a dangerous place, but for some reason he felt at ease, as if he were back in the Reliance sect, on top of the East Mountain, standing beneath the moon. "Oh," said Xuqing, looking shocked. She stared at Meng Hao, temporarily forgetting to cover her face with coldness. To Meng Hao, her blank look was filled with beauty. It was very different from the elder sister Xu from his memories. Coldness was unapproachable, but her numb look now made her seem very dear. Meng Hao laughed. "I suddenly have the feeling I never understood the real you, elder sister," he said with a smile, looking at her. He was no longer the scholar he once had been. He had experienced many things, and had grown through the years. In terms of both experience and wisdom, he had matured a lot. He was now able to tell that the coldness exhibited by Xuqing was intentional. He looked over her, catching sight of the milky white skin beneath the rips in her clothing. This was not the first time he'd seen a woman in such a position, but for some reason, when he'd looked at Chu Yuyan, he could remain calm. Seeing Xuqing now, though, a different look filled his eyes. Xuqing's gaze met Meng Hao's for a moment, and then she looked away, her heart pounding. A flush appeared on her face, and she gripped her garment tightly in her fists. She was clearly nervous. Meng Hao coughed lightly, and then slapped his bag of the cosmos, producing a set of clothes which he began to place around her shoulders. She said nothing, allowing him to cover her up. She lifted her beautiful face to look at the moon. As the moonlight shone onto her, Meng Hao looked at her hair and her lovely features. They were so delicate it seemed as if the wind might cause them to break. You killed someone in the sect. Who? Xu Qing tried to pretend she didn't notice Meng Hao looking at her, but her flush had deepened. An outer sect disciple surnamed Zhao, said Meng Hao, recalling elder brother Zhao's horrific death by the copper mirror. He wanted to take the immortal's cave you gave me. You've really got guts, she said, turning her head and shifting her gaze from the moon to Meng Hao. You actually killed someone inside the sect. Her words were spoken in earnest, and with the earnestness came her usual coldness. However, Meng Hao could see the uncomplicated simplicity beneath the coldness. Well, actually I didn't just kill one person, he said with a light cough. Oh. Elder sister Xu stared mutely again for a long moment. It was as if she were meeting him for the first time. She looked him over carefully, thinking for a while. So you got used to it? She hastily added, what I mean is, after killing so much, did you stop feeling uneasy at heart? Let's talk about something else, said Meng Hao. He could tell that she was very curious about the matter. But for a man and a woman to sit under the moon talking about killing people didn't quite seem appropriate. Oh, she said, nodding, looking at him. Her coldness concealed her true personality, but at the moment, she suddenly didn't know what to say. I want to show you something. Meng Hao tapped his bag of the cosmos, and the cosmetic cultivation pill appeared in his hand. With a smile, he handed it out to elder sister Xu. When she saw the pill, she stared in shock. Her eyes were fixed on the pill as she slowly raised her hand and took it from him. Then she closed her eyes. It was impossible to tell what she was thinking inside. After a moment, she opened her eyes and looked at Meng Hao for a long, long time. This was the third time Meng Hao had given her a cosmetic cultivation pill. She put it away quietly, then softly said, a few years ago I heard that the state of Zhao disappeared. Meng Hao sighed. Then, he proceeded to explain to her about Patriarch Reliance. She sat there underneath the moon, listening intently. When he told her that Patriarch Reliance was actually a gargantuan, vicious turtle, her mouth dropped open and a look of disbelief covered her face. To Meng Hao, she was truly beautiful. He suddenly stopped talking. This in turn caused Xu Qing to look into his eyes. When their eyes met, she suddenly turned and stared off into the distance, her heart racing. She was experiencing a strange feeling, and a strange nervousness. She felt an emotion she wasn't familiar with. In all honesty, she didn't mind. Actually, she liked it a bit. I've seen elder brother Chen a few times, she suddenly said, not sure what to talk about. This place is an ancient blessed land. Oh, right. How can your cultivation base possibly be at the foundation establishment stage? Meng Hao looked at her, a warm smile growing on his face. What was the situation with Zhao Shanhe? He asked lightly. He was a conclave disciple of the Black Sieve sect, she replied, a look of disgust appearing in her eyes. His clan has deep roots in the sect. He was shameless and disgusting. Over the past few years, he used foundation establishment pills as bait to force himself on numerous female disciples. Foundation establishment pills. He looked at her for a moment. He could tell that she had completed the circle of 9 qi condensation levels. With a foundation establishment pill, she could definitely go into secluded meditation and reach foundation establishment. That type of pill is very valuable, she said, a dismal look on her face. It's even hard for inner sect disciples to get one. You can only acquire one with the support of someone of the senior generation, or if you perform some special service for the sect. Or possibly if you have amazing latent talent. After Patriarch Zhan brought me to the Black Sieve sect, she completely ignored me. However, my personality was similar to a core formation cultivator of the senior generation, so she took me in as a disciple. She promised to give me a foundation establishment pill, but she left for the sect a few years ago and has never returned. According to the rumors, she's dead. Meng Hao slapped his bag of the cosmos. Instantly, 3 foundation establishment pills appeared in his hand. He held them out to her. I have some foundation establishment pills, he said. Xu Qing stared wordlessly at the 3 pills. She was shocked, never having imagined that Meng Hao would have a Foundation establishment pill, let alone 3. These 3 pills would cause a riot if they appeared within the Black Sieve sect. Those. Xu Qing breathed even harder when she saw the symbol etched into the side of the pills. Her eyes widened. Those were concocted by Grandmaster Pill Demon. I only have 3. But if it's not enough, then I can get some more for you when we get out of here. He smiled, placing the pills into Xu Qing's hand. To anyone else, these pills would be incredibly valuable. It's enough, really. 1, maybe 2 is probably enough. She was about to say more when Meng Hao closed her hand over the pills. I don't need them. You take them. If you need, I can stand guard for you when you use them. Unless you've been at the 9th level of qi condensation for dozens of years, are completely prepared, and have refined your body to the extreme, then you would need several months at the least. This place isn't appropriate. I'll wait till I get back to the sect and find an appropriate place to break through. She gave him a deep look. You can't stay here for too long, Meng Hao. You need to be careful. The Black Sieve sect has known about the existence of this place for a long time, but hasn't been able to enter. Recently, though, they came across an ancient map. With the map, they were able to open the entrance. Originally, this was an ancient blessed land, but over the years it has changed, and is now a land of death. Meng Hao's eyes glistened as he listened to her explanation. Supposedly, it has something to do with an ancient, violent spirit. I'm not really sure what it is, and there are lots of rumors in the sect about it. Although, I can tell you that the reason they've gathered so many rogue Foundation establishment cultivators is not to acquire treasures, but to create 100 spirits tower. It's not a big secret to the inner sect disciples, and even some in the outer sect know about it, but they don't care about rogue cultivators. Actually, there are even a few amongst the rogue cultivators who know about it. The 100 spirits tower is actually quite simple to describe. Basically, by using a variety of magical cultivation techniques, 100 Tao pillars are refined together to create the 100 spirits tower. The purpose of creating the tower is top secret. I don't think even the inner sect disciples know about it. Amongst the conclave disciples, only 2 or 3 even know a little bit. This was everything Xu Qing knew regarding the activities in the blessed land. Suddenly, a massive roaring could be heard from somewhere off in the distance. The instant the sound echoed out, the ground in the blessed land suddenly began to quake violently. At the same time, a mysterious gravitational force came into being. Meng Hao's eyes flickered. He felt the Tao pillars within him trembling, as if something were trying to pull them out of him. Chapter 153. Barring the way. Meng Hao's expression changed in a flash. His cultivation base rotated, and intense power from his perfect Tao pillars expanded out to resist the gravitational force. Xu Qing didn't react whatsoever at first. But when she saw the expression on Meng Hao's face, she suddenly started to look anxious and worried. The roaring sound echoed across the land, affecting not just Meng Hao, but all of the rogue Foundation establishment cultivators within the blessed land. Each and every one of them, regardless of what they were doing at the moment, immediately sat down cross-legged to meditate. However, in rapid succession, the bodies of multiple rogue cultivators exploded, sending flesh and blood showering in all directions. Only their Tao pillars were left intact. They flew through the air, dragged toward the location of the gravitational force. The Tao pillars flew toward what turned out to be a mountain range. Some powerful force had worn down a section of the mountains, so that it was sunken in. In the sunken area was a black tower. From the looks of it, it wasn't completely finished being constructed. There were currently 3 levels. From all directions, multiple Tao pillars flew toward it and began to form the 4th layer. When the 4th layer was completed, the gravitational power grew weaker and then disappeared. Over 30 rogue cultivators had died just now in the blessed land. This shocking event instantly struck fear into the hearts of all the other rogue cultivators. However, they were stuck inside. No matter where or how they searched, they would not be able to find any exits. The area where the gravitational force originated from was surrounded by nearly 1,000 Black Sieve sect disciples, sitting cross-legged, chanting bizarre scriptural texts. The Black Civ sect disciples who had entered the blessed land in random places were all rushing toward this area. Meng Hao opened his eyes, and they gleamed with a mysterious light. He glanced toward the area where the roar and the gravitational force had come from. His Dao pillars were now stable. They were perfect Dao pillars, so even though the gravitational force was not small, it was far from being dangerous to him. Seeing Meng Hao's pale face, Xu Qing quickly said, "That is the gathering place for the Black Civ sect disciples." All disciples were informed before entering to go to that place as quickly as possible. "When we get there, we have to chant some scripture, although I don't know why. I know of an exit. Including last time, I've been here twice now. I can take you there and you can leave this place. You can't stay here." Meng Hao didn't say anything. He stood, looking off toward where the gravitational force had originated. After a long moment, he shook his head. "The gravitational force doesn't affect me very much. And I have a way to leave here. As for you, though," he looked back at her. "If that gravitational force hadn't appeared, it would be fine. But now, the rogue cultivators will know something strange is going on. They'll be looking for Black Civ sect disciples to explain what's going on. Who knows what methods they will use to force out the information. Furthermore, if you know about that exit, then others will too. The people from the Black Civ sect wouldn't be so careless." He looked at Xu Qing, who had existed in his memories for so long as elder sister. "We haven't seen each other for such a long time. I'd hoped we could spend some more time alone together," he said quietly. "But now is not the time. I'll escort you to the Black Civ sect rendezvous point. You will be much safer there." "You really have a way to get out of here?" Xu Qing asked, her tone serious. "Really?" replied Meng Hao just as seriously. Xu Qing looked quietly at him for a moment, and it seemed as if she wanted to say something. Before she could, Meng Hao stepped forward and wrapped his arm around her supple waist, then flew up into the sky. Gale force winds blew about, but they were blocked by Meng Hao's cultivation base. All Xu Qing could feel was Meng Hao holding her. Her face reddened again. Her black hair drifted next to his face, filled with a delicate, unforgettable fragrance. Xu Qing didn't say anything as they sped along. In the past, she had been his elder sister, but he no longer exhibited any of the weakness he had as her junior brother. He was a foundation establishment cultivator. The way he had slaughtered Zhao Shanhe was evidence of the incredible changes he had experienced throughout the years. As Meng Hao breathed in her delicate fragrance, she also could smell him. It made her feel safe, like she was home. She suddenly thought back to Mount Daking, and the young scholar Meng Hao. She had carried him away to the Reliance sect in much the same fashion as he was holding her now, pressed up against him. A smile appeared in her eyes as she thought of this. She looked up at Meng Hao's profile and time seemed to slow down. She didn't understand what she was feeling, but she knew that right now, everything was peaceful. Suddenly she had the feeling that Meng Hao really was like her younger brother. "You grew up," she said suddenly. She wasn't quite sure why she said it, but she did. Hearing this, Meng Hao suddenly stopped flying for a moment and smiled wryly. Her face was covered with a cold look of seeming indifference, but it was obviously an act. "I think you're a few years older than me," he said, clearing his throat. 5 years older, she said seriously. "I'm your elder sister." "That's no big deal." Seeing her wide-eyed look, he laughed and added, Okay, I never said you're not my elder sister." Time passed, enough for an incense stick to burn. Suddenly, 8 beams of light appeared in front of them. Before the two of them could pass, the people caught sight of them. Qi condensation. That woman is a Black Civ sect disciple. Yeah, she must be. She's just what we've been looking for. All of them were cultivators of the early Foundation establishment stage. Their eyes glittered viciously as their gazes shifted from Xu Qing to Meng Hao. A blue-robed, middle-aged man amongst them looked coldly at Meng Hao and said, "Fellow Daoist, there's no need to tell us what this woman told you. We want her, now." It seemed that if Meng Hao didn't comply, the man would attack. Every person in their midst had hostile looks in their eyes. The gravitational power that had appeared had scared them witless, so they had decided to search for lone Black Civ sect disciples to extract information from. Now that they had found one, they wouldn't give her up easily. Xianxia started to pant with nervousness, unconsciously tightening her grip on Meng Hao's robes. To her, these 8 foundation establishment cultivators had incredibly high cultivation bases. Considering hers, she wouldn't be able to resist even one of them. "Screw off," said Meng Hao coolly. He didn't stop flying for even a second but continued to shoot directly toward them. Xianxia was getting even more nervous. She had seen him dispatch Xianxia, but at the moment, they were facing 8 people. She couldn't help but be worried. When he heard Meng Hao's words, the blue-robed man laughed. Killing intent sprang up in his eyes. Meng Hao's cultivation base was at the early foundation establishment stage, just like he himself, and he had 7 others backing him up. Considering Meng Hao was a single person, there shouldn't even be a need to begin fighting. And yet, Meng Hao had unexpectedly dared to rave wildly. Cold smiles broke out on the faces of the 7 other cultivators. In their minds, Meng Hao was simply talking big. However, even as the blue-robed man lifted his hand to begin an incantation gesture and the 7 others began to take out various magical items, Meng Hao opened his mouth. The lightning mist exploded out, and before any of the 8 of them could react, it had enveloped them. The earth below showered up as a dozen dark red vines shot upward. They screamed up savagely, directly into the midst of the lightning mist. Miserable, ear-piercing screams echoed out from within. They sounded like the cries emitted just before death. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever as, holding Xianxia in his arms, he continued on flying. The lightning mist wrapped up the bags of holding and delivered them to Meng Hao, who tucked them away. The vines burrowed back into the ground. As for the 8 cultivators, they were nowhere to be seen. The quick and efficient dispatching of the 8 cultivators didn't faze Meng Hao at all. But Xianxia sucked in a breath. Meng Hao had grown up to an astonishing degree. He continued to fly along at high speed. They were getting closer to the origin of the gravitational force. Along the way, they ran into single cultivators, or occasionally groups of 3 to 5. In total, they ran into 10 early foundation establishment stage cultivators. None of them was able to obstruct Meng Hao's progress in the least bit. Soon, they were very close to the Black Civ sect rendezvous point. Behind Meng Hao appeared 2 beams of light which emanated the power of the mid-foundation establishment stage. If that were the extent of it, it wouldn't be a big deal. But at the same time, ahead of Meng Hao appeared another beam. Inside was an old man. This was the same old man with whom Meng Hao had entered the Black Civ sect. He was of the late foundation establishment stage. He stopped several hundred meters in front of Meng Hao. The man's cold gaze fell upon Xianxia. "Fellow Daoist, I have been waiting here for quite some time waiting to see a Black Civ sect disciple. Hand the woman over to me." The 2 mid-foundation establishment cultivators came to a stop behind Meng Hao and Xianxia, who were now completely surrounded. The 2 mid-foundation establishment cultivators were middle-aged. Their eyes were dour, and they radiated a cold aura along with significant killing intent. They were clearly vicious and cruel. "What do you want to know?" said Meng Hao coolly. "I can tell you." Xianxia's face was wan as she rested in his embrace. Without him there, she would definitely have been captured and interrogated by rogue cultivators. Along the way, she had seen several Black Civ sect disciples who had been captured and questioned using various methods. But rogue cultivators were rogue cultivators. They wouldn't easily give up information when asked. After all, that information could be life-saving to them. By telling others, it could reduce their own chances and deliver both parties to death. "I'm not used to listening to what others have to say," said the old man calmly. "I only trust the results of my own handiwork." The power of the late foundation establishment cultivation base emanated out, sending massive pressure down onto Meng Hao. Chapter 154. To each his own path. Meng Hao didn't respond. He looked down at Xianxia and gave her a little smile. He retreated backward with her, causing the late foundation establishment old man to snort and then fly forward toward Meng Hao like a nightingale. His speed was incredible, and he displayed the full power of his late foundation establishment cultivation base, causing 8 ripples to spread out in the air. He obviously had 8 Dao pillars within his body. By this point, Meng Hao had already reached the two mid-foundation establishment stage middle-aged cultivators. They laughed, and one of them flashed incantation gestures. 100 ice blades magically appeared and began to spin, forming a giant whirlwind. The whirlwind shot toward Meng Hao, each blade within filled with the power of the early foundation establishment stage. The other man slapped his bag of holding to produce 5 black, buzzing, head-sized wasps with long, red stingers. "You overestimate yourself," said the man who had created the ice blades. The ice blade whirlwind screamed toward Meng Hao. Holding Shu Qing with his right arm, he waved his left hand. Instantly, an enormous flame dragon appeared, along with a wind blade. Shockingly, the flame dragon was not pure red, but streaked with gold. Because of the sublime spirit scripture, the dragon had become a golden dragon. The wind blade fused with the dragon, causing it to expand to 300 meters in length. Furthermore, 2 bulges appeared on the left and right side of the flame dragon. As soon as the wind blade touched the dragon, they exploded out into 2 enormous wings. It unfurled the wings. This was a flying rain dragon. Meng Hao had been enlightened regarding this technique when the rock had awakened the flying rain dragon legacy within him. The next thing to appear with the dragon was a flame sea. This flame sea was birthed from the power of the perfect Tao pillar. Mid-foundation establishment cultivators simply had no way to resist it. Boom! The ice blade whirlwind broke apart in an instant, transforming into a mist which was consumed by the flame sea. The flaming flying rain dragon roared. The 2 mid-foundation establishment stage cultivators retreated, looks of shock on their face. In the blink of an eye, the flying rain dragon shot forward and consumed one of them in a single bite. A miserable scream echoed out as his body was transformed into ash. All of this happened in the time it takes a spark to rise off of a piece of flint. Neither the old man of the late foundation establishment stage nor the man with the 5 wasps had time to react before it was over. Face expressionless, Meng Hao turned and strode directly toward the 5 ferocious buzzing wasps. They shot toward him, but as they neared, their bodies suddenly began to tremble violently. It seemed as if they had sensed something frightening and didn't dare to get any closer. They retreated instantly, something their master had never experienced before. Even as shock covered his face, laughing crying demon faces appeared in Meng Hao's eyes. One was clear, the other was blurry, and they instantly caused Meng Hao to emit a bizarre aura. The 5 wasps emitted sharp cries, and their bodies trembled even harder, as if they might lose their ability to fly. Suddenly, they turned and savagely attacked each other. As this bizarre scene played out, Meng Hao strode through the midst of the wasps, raising his left hand and slicing his own finger, covering it with blood. Suddenly, the entire area was covered with a bloody aura. When it disappeared, Meng Hao was standing directly in front of the middle-aged man. He lifted up his index finger and pushed between the man's eyebrows. The man's body shook, and his eyes bulged. His body rapidly began to wither, and by the time Meng Hao removed his finger, his entire body had transformed into blood, which drained down onto the ground. Meng Hao turned and looked at the shocked late foundation establishment old man. Only the space of a few breaths had passed since Meng Hao took action, and yet he had already completely exterminated 2 powerful mid-foundation establishment cultivators. His methods were vicious, his techniques bizarre. A coldness suddenly appeared in the old man's body, growing rapidly. Now he understood why Xianxia of the Black Sieve sect had been watching Meng Hao that day on the feng shui compass, and had even tried to bait him into doing something that would reveal his abilities. Clearly, Xianxia had heard something about Meng Hao. "Want to keep going?" Meng Hao asked calmly. His index finger still glowed with a bloody light, casting a bloody light over his body. The old man didn't respond. Considering the level of his cultivation base, he too could have easily killed the 2 mid-foundation establishment stage cultivators. But he couldn't have done it in such a leisurely fashion. He felt fear in his heart, especially when he saw Meng Hao's complete lack thereof. Clasping hands in salute, he moved backward several paces, giving way for Meng Hao to pass. "I am Xu Yudao, 1. Xu Yudao's name in Chinese is Xiaodal Zuyudaro. Xu is a common family name. Yu means have. Dao is the same Dao as the Dao, which also means way or path. As for the matter today, I offer my apologies. I believe we will be meeting again soon." He said the last in a very meaningful tone. Meng Hao thought for a moment, then nodded. The blood glow was beginning to fade as he shot off into the distance. In his arms, Xu Qing was completely shocked by the battle power of his cultivation base. She hesitated for a moment and then blurted, What level is your cultivation base, really? I'm at the peak of early foundation establishment, he said with a little smile. He now appeared to be a completely different person than the one who had just been fighting. He really had changed because of all his experiences through the years. However, this change was in the way he dealt with enemies. His disposition toward his friends was as scholarly as ever, and hadn't changed in the least bit. Actually, his ruthless killing had a lot to do with the poison within him. Someone infected with the three-colored resurrection lily would become increasingly cruel and ferocious until the day they transformed into an actual resurrection lily. How can you kill people of the mid-foundation establishment stage? Asked Xu Qing, her brow furrowed. Oh, there are many reasons, he said simply. I may be at the early foundation establishment stage, but I can hold my own against the late foundation establishment stage. Not much time passed before they reached a mountain. From the mountain peak, Meng Hao could see the large man-made area and the big black tower that was being erected. He could just make out the nearly 1,000 black Civ sect disciples sitting cross-legged around the tall tower, along with the faint sound of scriptures being chanted. He couldn't make out the details of the scriptures, however. I can't get any closer, he said. His gaze shifted from the scene below to Xu Qing. There shouldn't be any rogue foundation establishment cultivators in this area. You should be able to proceed on your own without being in danger. Take this, it's an invisibility item. You'll be able to use it after you reach foundation establishment. He handed her the invisibility talisman. She accepted it. She still had Meng Hao's robes draped over her. They were a bit large, but she still was beautiful. She looked at Meng Hao and was about to open her mouth as if to say something. Instead, she leaned forward and embraced him lightly. Her head pressed against his chest, and she could hear his heart beating. This was not an embrace of passion, but the embrace of a sister to a brother, of family. The sky was growing light, and the darkness was fading away. Meng Hao looked down at Xu Qing's beautiful hair. It seemed as if her hair knew he was looking at it, or perhaps it was the wind. It floated up gently to caress his face. A long time passed, and then Xu Qing stepped back and looked him deep in the eyes. You need to be careful, she said. Get out of this place as soon as you can. Then she turned, stepped onto a flying sword and shot down the mountain. She glided up and down a few times, eventually entering a small forest at the bottom of the mountain. When she emerged from the other side of the forest, Meng Hao's clothes were gone and she was dressed in a fresh black Civ sect robe. Meng Hao stood there the whole time, watching her disappear into the distance. A sense of departure filled him, and for a moment, he felt like he was back in the Reliance sect when it was being disbanded. Now, though, he was no longer a qi condensation cultivator. He was a foundation establishment, with a perfect foundation. He was no longer a child, but a young man. Wisdom birthed from maturity helped him to understand that it didn't matter whether you are a man or woman, every person has the right to make their own choices. His path could only be tread by he himself. Perhaps his path would cross the paths of others, and that was well and good. But for the moment, he needed to walk alone. Unless, he could be powerful enough to forge his own road. Change everything. The alternative was to live a life full of sighing. He watched Xu Qing until she reached the Black Civ sect rendezvous point. Determination filled his eyes. He lifted his head, looking into the sky. There, the rising sun and the moon were almost on top of each other. Meng Hao's eyes began to glow. Since I'm here, I might as well go check things out. If the classic of time is real, then using the copper mirror and spring and autumn trees, I can forge that so-called treasure of time. And then there's my thunderclap leaf. Lu Dao is in this place too. I might be able to get some more information. He turned and shot up into the air, using the position of the sun and moon to guide his path. He proceeded on for a while. Suddenly, a booming sound filled the air, and the gravitational force appeared again. This time, Meng Hao saw with his own eyes an early foundation establishment cultivator who couldn't fight against it. His body exploded, and an intangible Tao pillar flew out from the remains. The gravitational force is getting stronger. I'm worried that eventually, I won't be able to resist it. He frowned, suppressing the trembling of his Tao pillars and flying forward as quickly as possible. Soon, the sun and the moon would not be overlapping anymore. But now that Meng Hao knew which direction to go, he realized that he was getting closer and closer to his destination. This chapter was sponsored by Andy Zhang, Yucheng HSU, Nia Nguyen, Man Tran, and Matthew Rishton. Chapter 155. The last person. Time passed slowly, about 4 hours. The gravitational power appeared again once, during which time Meng Hao continued to fly past mountain after mountain. This place was very strange. The sun blazed brightly up above in the sky. If you looked closely, however, you could also see the vague shape of a moon within it. It seemed that within another 2 hours, they would split apart. After about another hour's travel, a vast plain appeared up ahead. The plain was filled with tall grass, half the height of a person. It swayed in the wind, making the plain look almost like a sea. The only sound present was the whispering of the wind. Within the plain was one area devoid of grass. 3 people sat there cross-legged. 2 were women and 1 was a man. The man was middle-aged and dressed in a grey robe. His face was expressionless, and his eyes were closed in meditation. An icy air drifted off of his body. He was of the late Foundation establishment stage. He was one of the 3 late Foundation establishment cultivators that traveled to this place on the violet feng shui compass. Of the 2 women, 1 was middle-aged and a bit overweight. Her features were ordinary, almost like those of a farm girl. She was another from that group of 3 powerful late Foundation establishment cultivators. An impatient expression filled her face as she looked at the last woman. This woman wore a veil which covered half of her face and obscured her features in a mysterious blur. "Fellow Daoist, did you invite me here so that I can sit around waiting? I somehow don't believe that our destination is really as dangerous as a dragon's lair or a tiger's den. Are fellow Daoist Sima and myself really not enough?" She laughed coldly. The cold, middle-aged man opened his eyes from meditation. They glowed as he looked at the woman in the veil. "Fellow Daoist Li, please wait just a bit longer," said the veiled woman, her voice light. "I have invited 5 people in total. If they do not arrive, then we might as well not proceed. With just the 3 of us, our chances of success will be small." The Li woman snorted and seemed to be about to say more. In the end she didn't. "Be patient for just a bit longer," said the veiled woman. "The sun and moon will cease to overlap in about 2 hours. If they haven't arrived by then we might have no other choice than to make an attempt ourselves." An hour passed, at which point a beam of colorful light appeared. Within it was a streak of violet. Whoever was approaching wore a violet robe. This person approached at top speed, arriving in the space of a few breaths. It was a young man with handsome features and a slight smile on his face. From his violet gown, it was obvious that he was no ordinary person. After landing, his eyes swept over the 3 others. He smiled at them and then cupped hands in greeting. "I'm late," said Xianxia 1. Xianxia appeared in Chapter 145, An Ancient Mountain Path, as well as Chapter 146. "Please forgive me, fellow Taoists. Sorry to keep you waiting, Junior Sister Han." This was none other than conclave disciple Xianxia of the Black Sieve sect. He looked at the veiled woman with a smirk as he revealed her identity. His appearance caused the Li woman to frown slightly. She stood and returned his salute. The cold man, however, did little more than give him a slight nod. The veiled woman frowned as the 2 others looked at her. She laughed lightly, removing her veil. Her face was incredibly beautiful and delicate, her skin as lustrous as jade. Everything seemed to grow brighter because of her beauty. Hanbei 2. Hanbei appeared previously in Chapter 141. The Cosmetic Cultivation Pill appears again Chapter 143. Ghost in the Night Chapter 146. This is Ultimate Vexation. "Extends greetings to all you fellow Taoists," she said. "Originally, I didn't want to reveal my identity for personal reasons. However, it seems Elder Brother Xie took issue with that, so I will be more open with my identity for the sake of everyone's comfort. This woman was none other than Han Bei. Her enchanting features coupled with the beautiful smile on her face right now made it impossible to be irritated with her. Xianxia smiled. I wasn't aware that junior sister Han had matters she wished to keep to herself. I spoke hastily. Please don't take offense. It doesn't matter, she replied with a smile. Considering the sect activity in this place, junior sister was worried that revealing her identity would cause a misunderstanding. But with elder brother Xie here, I have nothing to worry about. Our chances of success are now much greater. The Li woman looked on pensively, and the grey-robed cultivator frowned. Her words were like a cotton ball with a needle inside. Xianxia was just about to say something, but then stopped and turned his head. Everyone did the same, except for the grey-robed man. A colorful beam of light approached, accompanied by a roaring wind that sent the grass whipping about. It transformed into an old man. This was none other than Xu Yudao. He strode up to the group, his eyes flashing. He looked around for a moment, and then focused his gaze onto Han Bei. So, it turns out the invitation was from fellow Daoist Han. I think you owe an explanation regarding what the Black Civ sect is doing in this place. Han Bei smiled. With you and your special technique, fellow Daoist Shu, our mission will be much easier to accomplish. As for an explanation, you can rest at ease, sir. I will provide a full explanation soon. Seeing Xu Yudao, the Li woman quickly greeted him with clasped hands. Xianxia smiled and did the same. The grey-robed man simply nodded to him. So far, he had paid almost no heed to anyone. Is everyone here? Asked Xianxia with a smile. I heard there's one more, said the Li woman, smiling ingratiatingly at Xianxia. Oh, said Xianxia, his eyes narrowing. These three were late Foundation establishment stage cultivators, and as far as he could remember there hadn't been any others amongst the rogue cultivators. Could it be that Han Bei invited some other Black Civ sect disciple, he thought. Who might it be? He eyed Han Bei. Who is this last person we're waiting for? He asked with a smile. Would junior sister Han mind explaining? That's right, chimed in the Li woman. I'm very interested as to who this final fellow Daoist could possibly be. If he's important, I'll be sure to make friends. If he's not important, then I must ask, why are we sitting around waiting? The grey-robed cultivator closed his eyes, ignoring them. Xu Yudao stood there thoughtfully, his eyes flickering. Han Bei was silent for a moment and then said, I don't know who it is either, much the same as how I didn't know any of your identities at first. My guess is that while he isn't an important figure now, if we don't have him in our group, we may very well wind up empty-handed in our endeavor today. With this person, our chances of success will be increased by 30%. Her words were spoken calmly, but with iron-like resoluteness. Oh, said Xianxia. His interest was now piqued. And why does junior sister Han attach such importance to this person? The Li woman laughed coldly, her face filled with disdain, clearly feeling that Han Bei was exaggerating. She didn't believe that a Foundation establishment cultivator could possibly be so useful. A core formation stage cultivator would have been a different matter, but it was fundamentally impossible for such a person to join them. Could this person be a pseudo-core cultivator? Asked the Li woman with a sneer. Fellow Daoist Han, you should really be careful. There are many people in the world who fish for fame and compliments. It wasn't that she specifically didn't like Han Bei, actually, she hated all beautiful women. I'm truly not sure if this person is at the pseudo-core stage or not, Han Bei replied calmly, giving the Li woman a level look. In any case, his is definitely extraordinary. Of that, you can be certain. The Li woman said nothing more. Suddenly, Xianxia lifted his head and looked toward the horizon, as did Xu Yudao. Soon everyone's eyes were fixed on the beam of light which shot toward them. This was Meng Hao, of course. He whistled through the air, his eyes sweeping the land. Soon, he spotted the blank area on the plain, upon which the overlapping sun and moon shined, as well as the 5 people there. He looked them over as he landed onto the ground. His expression was the same as usual as he walked over. When he saw Meng Hao, Xu Yudao's expression flickered. A bright glow appeared in Han Bei's eyes, and her lips spread into a smile. As for Xianxia, a cold look covered his face as he looked Meng Hao over. "Greetings, fellow Taoists," he said coolly. "I was delayed on the way, and am a bit late." He glanced over the group, his gaze lingering for a moment on Han Bei. "Early foundation establishment stage," said the Li woman, frowning. A haughty look of disdain appeared on her face. She couldn't wait to rudely say, "This is the person fellow Daoist Han claims is essential? She thinks a trifling early foundation establishment is so important? Laughable. Or could it be that this junior generation infant just happened to accidentally stumble upon this area?" Meng Hao looked at her without a word. "I'm also very curious about this," said Xianxia with a smile. An almost imperceptible flicker appeared in his eyes. Hearing Xianxia's words caused the Li woman's arrogance to grow even greater. For an early foundation establishment cultivator to be in our midst is demeaning. Han Bei may have recommended him, but I, Li, shall test him out myself and see what skills he has. She began to walk toward Meng Hao. "Produce every scrap of power from your cultivation base," she said. "If you can live through one strike from me, then I'll agree that you're qualified to join us. If you're not qualified, then you'll be killed by the Black Civ sect anyway. It seems death will end all your troubles." By the time she finished speaking, she had reached Meng Hao. She lifted her right hand and a blinding orange light appeared, which transformed into a pink-colored whip. It flipped about, emitting cracking sounds.